And today we are very excited to hear from Chief Tim Doney. Tim grew up in Southern Oregon. He's a graduate of Corban University and the FBI National Academy. He spent the first 25 years of his career working at the Medford Police Department, attaining the rank of Deputy Chief. He was hired as Springfield Police Chief in December 2013. Tim and his wife live in Springfield. They have 3 grown children and 3 grandchildren. Please help me welcome a Chief.
It's actually Tim Doney. No, I'm pulling it up. So I am going to have the command staff of Springfield Police come up here and stand next to me. I'd like to introduce them. And I'm going to make them stand this entire time. Because at the end we're going to open up for questions, and we'll stick around after the bell rings sharp at 1300 hours, and we'll be available if you guys want to talk to us. So thanks for having us here. We're very honored to be invited to be your guests today. This is the command staff at Springfield PD. I'll talk a little bit about a transition to these gentlemen who are the leaders of Springfield Police. We've got another gentleman who is at the doctor right now for a doctor's appointment. He may be showing up any moment, so we're going to have a little fun with him when he comes in. So, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize former Chief Jerry Smith. Jerry, where you sitting? So, Jerry really laid the foundation for this department. When I came here in December of 2013, I was fortunate to inherit an organization that is very rich in talented individuals. So very fortunate to have that, and very fortunate to be in a community that is very supportive of their police department, that is showcased by a number of things, including the passage of the bond to build a police department and the largest municipal jail in the state of Oregon. So kudos to everybody here that was involved with that. And I also want to recognize Chris. Chris, where are you?
Would that be me?
That would be you. So Chris serves on our Springfield Police Advisory Committee. I'll talk a little bit about that function later, but basically it is a committee comprised of 11 members of our community, 10 community members, 1 council member, and they serve as an advisory board to the chief's office. So we very much appreciate her involvement in the community. So. Do you guys need the lights down, or can you see okay?
We got it.
Okay. So the biggest thing that's gone on in the last 15, 16 months has been a reorganization of the department. And the results of the reorganization are standing before you here today. On the far end, I want to introduce Deputy Chief Rick Lewis. I've been here for in excess of 30 years. I was a longtime captain. Much of the reason that I'm up here today is because I met Rick Lewis back at the FBI National Academy in 2008. We became acquainted back there, and he really talked up Springfield, the city, as well as the police department. So when an opening came up, I immediately called him. So next to him, Lieutenant Tom Rapay. He's in charge of the operations division. In the middle is Lieutenant Russ Boring, who is in charge of the Springfield Municipal Jail. And then next to me is Lieutenant Dick Jones, who is in charge of internal affairs and professional standards. Local guys, they're very invested in the community and they have skin in the game, so to speak. What I will tell you is when I first arrived, the makeup and structure of the organization was a chief, 2 captains, and then it dropped right down to the sergeant rank. We spent about a year talking with all the employees, talking with other chiefs around the state. We saw some benefit in potentially moving to a rank structure that would include lieutenants, because my intent is to give them some autonomy. Really, the way the organization is made up is the chief, I want to give them the vision of where we need to go in conjunction with what the community wants. Rick Lewis is really the chief of operations, and the lieutenants each are going to get a lot of autonomy to engage the community and to move forward following the vision that we set out, but we want to give them the ability to work with the community to figure out how to get things done and give them some opportunities to grow as leaders and to do things differently. So I'll talk a little bit more, but basically the structure of the department is the chief's office. The internal affairs and professional standards is in the chief's office. And then the 3 divisions are detention, which is the jail, support services, and I'll break these out a little bit further when we go on some further slides, and then the operations division. So in my office, Deputy Chief Lewis obviously works with me on a regular basis. We have IA Professional Standards Lieutenant Dick Jones, and he does the significant internal affair investigations. The ones, if it's a criminal investigation that involves one of our members, we farm that out to another agency, so there's some neutrality and an objective look at the case. But if there's a significant violation of policies or procedures, Dick would be the one that investigates those. He also does all the background investigations on candidates that we want to hire. And in addition to that, we are moving towards state accreditation. So we want to compare what we do as a police department with the best standards and practices for our industry. I think there's some benefit to that. If you don't get on the train passes you by and you miss the station. And there are a lot of things going on in our nation today with reference to law enforcement and our interaction with the community. And it's really easy to get isolated in our region. It's easy to get isolated within our state, within the corner of the valley that we're in. And I think it's important that we look all around us to find out who's doing what, and maybe we could try some things that are a little bit different. And who knows, maybe it works out better, maybe we go back to the way we're doing things. So Dick is really going to spearhead those efforts. That includes possibly some policy revisions and also moving towards the state accreditation, which is about a 24-month process, so we're looking at that. Rick, as the deputy chief, one of his functions is to be the SWAT commander in relation to any SWAT call-outs. We can talk more about that later if anyone has questions. We have a multicultural liaison position. This is my position that is an outreach position to the minority community. And then a couple other employees within this section. So Tom Rapay is our operations lieutenant. He has, what Tom does is supervise really, when you think about a police department, he supervises all the employees that you think about. The patrol officers that are in uniform, the motorcycle officers that you may see, the detectives that are following up on cases. So he's got 6 patrol sergeants that supervise 37 patrol officers and 4 community service officers. They're the ones that drive around in the little white pickups. They handle non-emergent cases, but they are responsible for policing Springfield 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. He also has a sergeant, Sergeant Dave Lewis, who supervises a group of detectives and an analyst. We obviously have what we consider the best in the department or in the detective positions, because they have to follow up on some of the most serious cases that we work. Primarily felony cases, although they do work some misdemeanor cases, but cases involving homicide, robberies, burglaries, child maltreatment, things like that. So a very important function. And then we have a new position that we just created with the reorganization, and that's called the Special Service Section Sergeant. And this sergeant is responsible for a lot of those things that consume a lot of our daily time and activity, and they're important to everyone in this room. But they maybe aren't as glamorous all the time that you see on TV. So if I was to talk with most of you, chances are most of you haven't had violent crime that happened right next door to you or in your neighborhood. You hear about it on the news, you hear about gang activity, you hear about a homicide, a shooting, a rape. Most of you don't have that right next door to where you live, don't necessarily have it on your block or within your neighborhood, but you hear about it, read it in the Register Guard, you hear about it on TV. A lot of the complaints and the activity that we generate, some of it isn't even criminal in nature. Quite honestly, the police department is the 24/7 answer man and woman. We are the broker of social services when everybody else closes. The fire department's out there 24/7 and the police department is, but when Lane County Behavioral Services or mental health closes, we're the ones that answer the call. When someone is in crisis because they've had too much to drink, we're the ones that answer the call. When there are problems within the neighborhood because someone's got a basketball hoop on the street and they're not supposed to, we're the ones that get the call. And so as a result, we've created this new section within the department, and it's really designed to deal with a lot of those things and some of the specialized units within the department that need a little bit of attention and paying attention to. So this particular sergeant supervises our traffic team, which is comprised of 3 motorcycle officers and 1 officer that is in a car assigned specifically to DUI enforcement within the city of Springfield. We also have the neighborhood response team. Currently, that's comprised of 1 community service officer. Our intent is to increase this to a patrol officer as well, and we plan to work collectively with Department of Public Works, their code enforcement officers. There's even some talk of us potentially taking over the code enforcement function as well. So this is really designed to answer those problem residences that we lose our mind about, but there isn't exactly a clear-cut answer on how to solve it. And I'm going to give you an example. If you watch the news, about a year ago we had a problem with a drug house on 18th Street in Springfield, and it created quite a stir. We had the TV stations out there, we had the register guard, we had been out there probably 60 times in 3 months. Most of us don't have the police to our house but once in our lifetime. This home really turned the neighborhood upside down. Some of the activity there was criminal activity because it was a drug house, but it also was a nuisance house. It was filled with garbage, there were code violations, all kinds of things. And so this new neighborhood response team and unit, the idea behind that is when we get a problem house or a problem business, that we can address it with kind of a multi-pronged approach. And one is if there's criminal laws being violated, we'll have a police officer that can address those criminal laws. If that means that we need to put out extra patrols to saturate the area, we'll do that. We have a community service officer that works and enforces our chronic disorderly nuisance residence law, which is on the books that we recently updated. And that basically, what it does, it gives the city the ability to shut down that property and tie it up if the property owners don't take care of the nuisance problems with the property. And the final prong would be other code enforcement functions, fire code violations, electrical violations, unlawful accumulation of garbage, things like that. So our hope is that this approach really is going to reap some benefits for the city of Springfield. I've got some personal experience working with a model like this, and it's quite successful. To date, since we started having problems with this home on 18th Street, the home has been sold. It's actually the nicest house on the block, and the drug activity is gone. We've worked on 6 locations since that time, and currently they've all been resolved with the exception of, I believe, 2. We're still working with those locations with homeowners. And this is the last guy that missed the message. We were supposed to be here at 10 a.m. This is Lieutenant Scott McKee. So, and I'll interrupt the program just to introduce him. Lieutenant Scott McKee is new to the Springfield Police Department, newer than me, so I'm no longer the low guy on the totem pole. He came to us from the City of Eugene Police Department, and he was selected as one of the lieutenants when we held our competitive process. And he is in charge of the Support Services Division, and I'll talk a little bit about his division here in a bit. Finally, in reference to this section, we've got our school resource officers. We have officers assigned to Springfield and also Thurston High School. We've got a dedicated animal control officer. And finally, we've got a pretty vibrant core of volunteers. We have about 30 volunteers that help us with everything from fleet maintenance. They drive our vehicles down to the city shops, they wash them, they make sure they're supplied. We have other volunteers that work in the lock program, where if someone's home has been broken into, we'll actually go out and change the locks for you. In some cases, we'll change out the entire door or the window. A lot of great programs and use of volunteers. So if anybody's interested in volunteering, please see us afterwards, because we have a job for you. Support Services Division, this is Lieutenant McKee's division. He is in charge of those services and work units within the department that really support the core function of operations. He's responsible for our dispatch center. He's responsible for our records section, as well as our property control section, which holds all the evidence that we seize. Just a little bit about our dispatch center. We are not what is called a primary PSAP, or a public safety answering point, a 911 center. In this particular area, in the metro area of Eugene, Springfield, the 911 center is located over at 2nd and Chambers, and it's called Central Lane. We are on the same computer system as they are on. So what happens is if you call 911, that call goes into them live time. We get that call via computer. And so when the dispatcher over there is entering the information into the computer on the call, we have it at the same time. So we know the call is coming in, we can see which jurisdiction it's coming from, And so then eventually Central Lane will transfer the call to the Springfield Police Department, Communication Center, or Dispatch Center, and we dispatch an officer. But we're really ahead of the game because computer-wise, technology-wise, we're receiving that same information. As soon as it's being typed in the keyboard there, we have it live time. And so oftentimes we've got a car dispatched before we even pick up the telephone and the call that comes in. Our detention division, or the Springfield Municipal Jail, Lieutenant Boring, as I mentioned, is the supervisor in charge of that. What can I say? It is a success. And again, a lot of credit goes to Jerry Smith and the folks up here and the folks in the audience that were involved in passing the measure to fund it. I have to tell you, as a guy coming from a different part of the state who was extremely frustrated with the lack of bed space and accountability, it was amazing to come up here. And Springfield, as far as the law enforcement community goes, is really the envy of the state because there's resources to hold people when you arrest them. I mean, I don't know if many of you know, but here in Lane County, and I may be off a few percentage points, but the last time I talked to Alex Gardner, the DA, about 20% of all the viable felony cases in Lane County, the ones where there's a suspect, where there's probable cause, where they could get a conviction in court, are not prosecuted because they don't have the prosecutors to handle the cases. We've got a 500-bed jail in Lane County that only holds, I think right now, about 265 inmates out of 500. The work camp was shut down. But what we do have is we have a 100-bed state-of-the-art municipal jail facility that our daily population of inmates is about 65, which means we've got 35 beds available every single day. And if you do the crime, we're going to pick you up and put you in the jail. And honestly, I have to say, from talking to a lot of people around the community, it's made quite a difference in the vibe downtown and on a lot of property crimes and things like that. And I can talk a little bit about our reduction in crime that I think the jail is one factor in that. So talking a little bit about 2014, I want to go over just a few statistics and kind of let you know what we did. You can see up there our budget's a little over $20 million per year. We arrested 549 DUI offenders. I'm proud of this number, and I'll tell you why I'm proud of this number. Actually, 2 weeks ago, we were recognized as the top DUI enforcement agency in the state of Oregon. And one of our officers, Officer Ryan Stone, was actually selected as the top DUI officer for the entire state. So that says a lot. Now, when I say that, some people think, whoa, Springfield's got a lot of drunks. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that every community in the state has intoxicated drivers on the road. And quite honestly, if you want to know the statistics, it's kind of scary after 10 p.m. and really scary on weekend nights when some points 1 out of 6 to 7 cars is legally intoxicated. What I will tell you out of these numbers, and statistics can tell a lot of stories, but these are good numbers because these are statistics that are self-generated. It means an officer went out and looked for it. So when people say, yeah, you've got a lot of drunks, I say, no, we've got a lot of good fishermen because we know how to look for them, and we really make an effort to do that. And that goes from the command staff level down to the line troops. It is very important to them for traffic safety, but it's very important to protect everyone in this community from intoxicated drivers. We wrote a little over 11,000 police reports. We booked over 2,000 people into the jail. Some other numbers I've got out there. We made 5,800 arrests. We wrote 4,800 traffic citations. We answered 85,000 phone calls. We responded on calls for service 53,000 plus times last year, so we are busy. We locked just under 6,000 pieces of evidence into our property division. We issued 3,500 dog licenses. We did a lot of things last year with the resources that we have. We started training the entire sworn element of the Springfield Police Department last year on crisis intervention training, which is training that reaches out to those folks that are in mental health crisis. We will have every sworn member in the department trained by the end of this year, which is Pretty exciting because quite honestly, mental health, I don't need to tell you, it's on the front page of the paper even as of yesterday. Mental health is one of those big things that is on our radar screen every single day. And the crisis and things that happened in Eugene could happen in Springfield. The big three things that drive our activity are drugs, alcohol, and mental health. And if we could fix those things, we would be out of a job. And it would be nice if we could do that, but I don't see that happening in the near future. As far as the jail goes, we rent out jail beds, and if we've got empty beds, it still costs us the same amount of money to run the jail, whether it's full or not full. And so we actively pursue leasing out beds. We have contracts with the city of Oak Ridge, Coburg, Junction City, and Eugene. We made about $250,000 last year. We currently are in conversations with actually 2 larger agencies in the state that are interested in potentially renting out some beds, and we've been approached by a third within the last 2 weeks. So more to follow in reference to that. With that being said, I want to talk a little about our crime statistics. So crimes are really made up of 3 things: behavioral crimes, property crimes, and person crimes. And in 2012, we handled just under 10,000 crimes. In 2013, our number went down to 9,400, and last year, 2014, the number dropped to 7,500. So we're really seeing some good movement on those. Granted, something could happen this year and we could spike, but you want to look at a long term what the statistics show. And the other thing that we did last year that we're proud of is, I think most of you know, we've got a very vibrant police canine program. We've got 4 patrol dogs. It's well known around the state. In June, we're having canine competition out at Springfield High School, so I would encourage you all to show up. It's free. It's a great fundraiser for us because that's how we purchase our dogs. We actually have enough donations now for the next 1.5 dogs. So anyway, so it's a very popular program, but we actually added a 5th dog this past year, and that's a drug detection dog, and he's been quite successful. So we're excited about that. We're involved in a lot of different things within the community. Currently, we have our 30th Citizen Police Academy class going on. If you've never done this before, I'd encourage you to do this. It's a great opportunity to see your police department. If you live in Springfield, you work in Springfield, we are your police department. You are our employer, and we want to be accountable to you. And if we make mistakes, we're going to recognize them, and we'll move forward from there. But this is an opportunity for you to see and get a glimpse of what we do for you and what we do for the community on a regular basis. It's about a 10-week program. We meet on Wednesday nights, 2 to 3 hours. You get to go out to the shooting range. You get tours. You get to go to dispatch. You get a chance to talk to the detectives. It's a pretty fun time from everyone that's been involved in it. So I would encourage you to think about that if you're interested in for next year. And a little more about some of our outreach. This is a photograph of last year's open house. We had between 600 and 700 people there. Every year we have an open house. We're involved down at Summer Fair with Moana Lane down at Island Park. We have the National Night Out. The most current thing that we're embarking on is trying to figure out how to reinvigorate the Neighborhood Watch program. It was quite popular in the last couple of decades, but times have changed. It's kind of like how people get news. They used to get it from print newspapers, and then the TV, and now it's kind of turned to the social media. So we are embarking on a new program that's called Next Door. Similar to Facebook in some ways, but what it does is it connects you with your neighbors via social networking. We've got some guidelines on how to be safe. Just because you're connected via social networking doesn't mean that you tell them when you're going to be out of town or where you hide the spare key. But it really does connect people. So I'd encourage you to look into that. If you're interested, I can give you some more information on that. And what the future holds. Future in law enforcement, body cameras. Transparency is the buzzword these days in law enforcement. It is a big deal. We are moving fast forward towards that because eventually if we don't jump on the bandwagon for body cameras, we're probably going to get forced to by the legislature. So we are actually embarking on a pilot program this next fiscal year starting July 1 when we're going to try some different variations of body cameras. It's not a panacea. It's not going to answer all things because if I have a body camera that's facing this direction, you don't see what President Jim's doing right now or what these guys are doing. So it's just another piece to the puzzle. It's not going to be the end of everything, but it's one thing that we're looking at. The other thing that we're embarking on is we are going to start a forensic computer examiner position, which should be coming up here very shortly. So a lot of crimes now are perpetrated by people on the other side of the world. So we're looking at moving forward with that. Again, I mentioned earlier, we're looking towards state accreditation, potentially a different policy system. Trying to get qualified applicants, that is a big deal, very hard. I would like nothing better than to hire folks that grew up in this community, but it's getting harder and harder. It's getting harder in particular in light of some things going on in the United States where people don't want to be police officers. So I would encourage you, if you have family or friends that are interested in a career, please encourage them to talk to us. We would love to try to court them and potentially help them grow and be able to be one of us. And we are working feverishly on that and winding down to the end because I know I'm going to get rung by a bell here. So the three last things I really want to talk about, as I mentioned, the things that drive our business: drugs, alcohol, mental health issues. Please pay attention to that. We're going to be coming out for a levy next year, so you're probably going to hear me asking you for some help if you're supportive of it. And the final thing I want to talk about is the Springfield Police Advisory Committee. This is an advisory board. Chris is on it, as I mentioned. We have 2 new positions on it. One is a representative of the faith clergy community, and the other new representative is a representative of our minority community. So I've got some brochures and flyers up here on that, so I know we have some folks representing both groups here today. If it's something that interests you, please let us know. And with that, we're done. I also failed to mention, this is National Police Week, so the timing for the program was excellent.